just thought I would recap what we already know as it relates to protocols around open houses. And I think it'd be a good idea for us to just have discussion around it if you're all there. Amon, can you hear me? Is that a yes, Amon?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna attempt to share a screen. Is there something? Do I have that kind of clearance? Do I have level 4 clearance on this thing?
Yeah, you do. Just go towards the bottom, and it should say present now in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna go. So, do I want a tab, a window, or my entire? I'm gonna share my entire screen. Yeah, that ought to do. Share. Can't share your screen. All right. When you guys see this, what do you see? Do you still see me, or do you see BCREA's website?
I see you.
We see you.
Oh, it's not working then. Let's try that again. Present now, he says, your entire screen. Let's just go with a tab. No, we're not going to do a tab. All right. Share this. Can you guys see this screen now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. It's not the one I want to share. I'm gonna go to where I wanted to go. Sorry about that.
Did that say Pornhub?
It did not. It did not. No, definitely not. So let's go here first. So REBC, you guys already know about this. This is not really meant to be educational, other than I really wanted to share. Yeah, maybe we should just mute ourselves. Well, for those that are going to take calls or noise in the background, just maybe keep them off in the distance. But I do want to have a conversation around this. So I wanted to, can you see my mouse floating around over here on the side?
Yes.
Ish. Okay, good. So I'm just going to read this part to you. Michael Noseworthy, superintendent of real estate, noted it's important for the real estate industry to maintain public trust and confidence by continuing to work in a manner that protects the public. By following the advice and recommendations of the regulators, public health officials, and government, we can help reduce the spread. So essentially, what they're saying is, I mean, they're obviously urging us not to do open houses, but what they're saying is let's maintain trust. Our main goal is to make it look as though, or be perceived as though we actually do care about what's going on. COVID cases are on the rise, and realtors are acting responsibly, professionally, taking care of the public themselves and the people that they're serving by way of buyers or sellers. Why do you think, I mean, apart from real estate being an essential service and the numbers going up, has anybody seen an uptick, I should ask the question, in the amount of traffic coming through open houses? Yeah, so just raise your hand, actually. That would be fine if you're in there. I can see you. Got it. What I've been hearing pretty much across the board without exception, that open houses are getting anywhere from, I guess, a low of 8 people up to 30 plus people. And this has been happening consistently Saturday and Sunday, weekend after weekend after weekend. And it would appear as though social distancing measures are not being taken all that seriously.
Nope.
Which is unfortunate. And we're lucky, I think, as an industry that someone from the public hasn't recorded this on some social site and started to pick on us. Quite truthfully, we're lucky we've not been called out on that yet, but we should be, for the most part, be called out for the levels of people coming through. And of course, we're just kind of treating, there are some people are saying that it feels like we're treating open houses like we always used to, which to some degree, I mean, this timing of the no open houses is a pretty good thing from that perspective. The other thing that that I've been hearing people say, and I'm hearing this in Facebook threads from our EBGVs on their Facebook site, was that there are opens being held by appointment only, and when they're going to show up, no one's really honoring the times, the slots. So that's good information for you, because if you're going to do an open house by appointment only and you're going to make it clear to the public that you're going to do it by appointment only, then you want to make sure that if someone's late, they may have missed their slot and they may not have the ability to get in at that time if there's someone stacked in behind them or several people stacked in behind them. And I almost have to resist the temptation to want to be as accommodating as possible, but really be, in the interest of the public, keep everybody safe as possible. And I think that's something you need to keep in mind. The other factor that you have to think about when you're doing an open house, and of course you have to mention this to your clients, is that when you're doing an open house, if you're going to do an open house by appointment only, are you putting signs up? And if those signs are going up, are you advertising on your sites that it's open house by appointment only? And are the public just showing up thinking it's your regular open house and wanting to come on through? Because also the thing that's being talked about is people will have these appointments only open houses show up, but then members from the public are clearly just walking right past them and trying to get into the house. So keep it in mind. I think probably in my mind, the safest thing to do is just to follow the protocols and just stay out of doing open houses. In our board, the Vancouver board's site, they have posted keeping safe at open houses. Now this was posted on September 30th, but they're basically saying if you're doing open houses, please remember the protocols put in place by WorkSafe BC. Please make sure that you're having meaningful conversations with your sellers so that they're fully aware of the risks. And most importantly, make sure that you're documenting that conversation that you had with your seller. And then that's extremely important. And of course, probably very redundant for all of us because we've been talking about this for quite some time. And I believe we do open houses. We have a high standard around which we keep people safe at our open houses. So with this said, the main message that the heads of industry are trying to say is, for now, please stop doing them. Has anybody ever wondered why can't they ban them? Does anybody know who can ban open houses? So it's a misconception that the real estate council might have the authority to ban open houses. They do not have the authority to ban open houses, plain and simple. They are a regulator of our license only. They mandate education and our license, they maintain our licenses, but beyond that, they're not the ones that can mandate the ban of open houses. The real estate boards, Fraser Valley Board or Vancouver Board, they're clubs that we belong to, but they don't have the authority over us to tell us that we cannot do open houses. They don't have the authority to ban open houses. So there's essentially only two sources that can ban open houses. The first is WorkSafe BC, and they're not doing it. They're simply telling us not to do them, but they're not banning open houses. They understand and recognize the predicament that we are an essential service. So if you're wondering why aren't these people banning them, like if they're so bad, why aren't they being banned? Well, WorkSafe BC is your first source. Your second source is Terry and myself, your broker owners. The broker owners of offices can create a policy banning open houses. But as you can imagine, as owners, it would be a bit of a death blow from our perspective to tell our agents, you cannot do this. You cannot do an open house. And to date, I don't know of any office that has actually taken that step. But what we can do is make sure that we're proactive and we're giving the most up-to-date information as we can to make sure that when you're doing them responsibly and following the latest protocols. So in case you wondered why haven't they been banned by boards or by council or by BCRA, they simply don't have the authority to do so, and that's it. But they do have the authority to strongly urge we don't do them, and that's as close as they can get to a ban. When they make these strong recommendations, it's my personality to follow them as opposed to try and walk the line and find the way to make them work successfully. I would rather just follow them. And I would also just add that in this market that we're in right now, we're selling every home that we've listed without a single solitary open house. And every buyer that we've shown or sold homes to, we've sold them by booking just your typical regular appointments and going in and writing offers. So I can see an argument for not needing to do them. The only argument you might have around carrying on with an open house is that you are receiving lawful instruction from your seller, your client. And we have a duty to obey all lawful instructions from our clients. Well, if they ask us to do an open house, there's nothing unlawful about that because WorkSafe BC has not banned it. Therefore, it's a lawful instruction and you have to decide whether you're going to comply or not. And that's a whole different conversation for you to have with your sellers or with yourself personally. Does that all make sense? for those of you that have seen some train wrecks in open houses, by all means, please, or for those of you, let's go this way. For those of you that have seen some successful open houses, can you unmute yourself and share your experience on what a successful open house looked like, whether within our brokerage or in someone else's brokerage? I believe it should be everyone's experience to lead a meeting like this and then ask a question, but only to hear silence. It should be everyone's experience in life to have this moment right here. So then, Jane, please speak. But you have to unmute yourself. Can you guys hear Jane?
No.
Okay, I can't hear Jane either. Jane, just for the record, you look good. Yeah, I can see that's a you're welcome. That's awesome. Would it be safer to assume then, just by lack of response other than Jane's, that there probably haven't been, for those of you that have been through somebody's open house or even conducted them, that they're not as successful or easy to control?
Well, one thing, Josh, that you see in the WorkSafe BC sort of requirements for our industry is that ensure that viewings are scheduled at appropriate intervals to allow sufficient time to clean, sanitize, and ventilate the property between viewings. I mean, things like that. So there's no way you could do an uncontrolled open house and be able to also meet the WorkSafe BC requirements. So
I think, thanks, Michael, for pointing that out. I did go to a gym in Burnaby. This week we've been doing our workouts by Zoom, and surprisingly, even though I have no equipment, I'm getting my butt kicked. It's a really good workout. Now, prior to this week's experience, I wouldn't have thought that would have been the case, because I thought I had to go to the gym, use the equipment that they have in there. Their protocols are really clear. In order to get through the threshold into the gym, I have to wear a mask. Once I'm inside, I have a square, a taped off square I work out in. I can take my mask off. When I'm done, I have to spray down and wipe down all of my own equipment that I touched. And then when I leave, I have to put my mask back on. They then sanitize the station again, one more time. And they leave an hour spread between my workout and the next workout to clean that place up. Sorry, half an hour spread. And so that, Michael, that would be like an example of a benchmark for protocol. So if you were going to do opens from 2 to 4, you might have a 15-minute window where only so many people come through, and then a 15-minute window where you sanitized again. And that might not even be realistic, but that would be along the lines of what they've been doing. The gym industry's been doing to try and stay alive.
Yeah, so I'm noticing the same thing in the gym industry. I did ask the place that I train at, what was the maximum number of people in here at one time before COVID? They said 70. Now they have a 12-person limit and a half hour in between. So everybody gets 1 hour. There's 12 people. And then there's a half hour clean and sanitize between the next bout of 12 people.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's also important for our industry that we do the same sort of things, that we're making sure that those things are happening in properties that we're, supervising and bringing people through.
You bet. I will say that I defended our company recently from a Facebook thread where a good friend of mine, a realtor from another brokerage out in the Tri-Cities, was pretty upset. He's obviously taking the no open house call to action very seriously. And I appreciated it. I appreciated his post. The only thing I didn't appreciate is he said a KW agent was doing an open house. So there was a long filled-in thread of other people responding, and they had all mentioned how they had seen other people conducting opens, but nobody mentions the name of a company. So KW was the only one mentioned in this particular thread, to which I stood up and said, hey, I really support what you're doing. I like this thread. I like the direction you're going. More people need to do this. You need to take my company's name off of there. There's no need to mention a brokerage. And if you have a concern, reach out to me directly or blah, blah, blah. But
did you not say that would breach the rules of cooperation?
I did. I told him that privately. I didn't want to get technical.
Yeah, that's really what he's doing. He's breaching the rules of cooperation. So
what? Yeah. Well, and code of ethics, because you're not allowed to discredit another brokerage or another member. Yeah. So I just simply wanted to, because I really liked this person and I liked his message. So I didn't want to derail that. I just wanted to make sure that he knew. So I stood up for us in that sense that no, you don't. But the bigger point to that is he had the courage to post, and he's a member. It's not someone from the public. So I think we might start seeing more and more members posting things like that, and they might be the ones that start calling each other out around opens. So the reason I share that with you is, if you're going to step into those waters, be prepared for it to be a little rocky, to be a little stormy, because there might be some members that see your open, and if you happen to be an open house where things are on fire and there's people all over the place, you better be prepared for that. And for what it's worth, we shouldn't be putting ourselves or our clients or the public in a position where they're coming through and potentially exposed to that many people coming through the opens. So just be careful. That's really what we're trying to say around opens. So does anyone have anything they want to say around opens before I move on to the Landowner Transparency Act?
Just a quick thing. Do you think I don't know if this would work for agents, it's just a thought that came to me, is already have a virtual tour on, like on your iPad or laptop or whatever, at the entrance of the open house, and then see if the people are still interested in going through, and have them separated, because it gives them a really good idea.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Just say, hey, this is what it's like. Are you still interested? Then kind of go through. I don't know if that would work. I have no idea.
I like the idea, Carol. I really like the idea that anybody who's going to come through has to sign off saying that, affidavit swearing that, hey, I've viewed all 30, 20, 10, 40 photos that you have. I've gone through your virtual tour. I have reviewed the floor plan. I've already driven this neighborhood in advance. I know the schools. I know everything that I need to know. And I have now narrowed it down to, yes, I would like to see this property on the inside. Everyone should have a right to see a property on the inside. That certainly has been a consistent message across all 11 boards in the British Columbia. At some point you will move it to an in-person meeting, but you do need to go through your own series of checklists. And I think as agents, we should also be encouraging our clients to, or at least providing them with, here's the floor plan, have a look at it, make sure it works. If you're not able to drive by, here's Google Maps. Can you really do a good view of this property via Google Maps? You go back to simple things like you're going to meet them separately. You're not going to drive together in a car. You're not going to provide them with pets. You're going to make sure that they've got their own masks coming to the appointment. Some agents will require that you wear gloves, so you may want to have a box of gloves in your truck. Gloves are largely ineffective. There's just no point in arguing with the listing agent who requires them. And we don't know if the requirement came from them or their seller. So there's no point in getting mad at them either. What's Carla? Carla, if we have created our own form COVID viewing ahead of time, do we need to get it approved by our brokerage? I think it would be always a good idea to run it by us, Carla. Hopefully you can hear me, but yes, I definitely would like to see what you've got on there. I think Carol and Michael would be interested to make sure that we're compliant, more on council requirement sides than anything. And then you also asked, because you may have, who should I send it to?
I think you just answered that question. So
yeah, Carol, you send it to Carol. Yeah, Carol and Michael would be great, and they're going to ask for your email addresses. Can both of you just type in your email addresses in the chat for Carla? Carla's also asking, because you may have open houses in your state, which is legally binding agreement. Oh, Schedule A, which is legally binding. Yes, so that's great, Carla. I'm glad you brought that up, because open houses are in my Schedule A, but they do not say I'm going to do them. They are discussed by way of open discussion. They're meant to be informational, and a seller can choose to opt in to do them. They're not a value proposition. They're really just there for a discussion. Open houses, or sorry, I shouldn't say open houses. Lock boxes are a yes and no, like they will initial yes and no. And then Ken and Jane have what I believe to be the penultimate of Schedule A's that has ever existed in the land of real estate. And they have a very beautiful discussion on, it's a full page on one of the Schedule A's for open houses. And so they do a great job on that. Carol has shared her email address with you, Carla, and those were great questions. So that's it. You know what? Schedule A's and open houses. Just be very safe, be very mindful, be professional, and be prepared to have to face some heat, because there will be some people that will be a bit confused as to why you're doing them, given that we've been urged not to. And there's a lot of, I would say, just lack of knowledge about why they're still happening, even though we've been asked not to. So now you should all know who has the authority to ban them, Your office, Terry and I have the authority to ban them for our agents. And then, of course, WorkSafe BC. But those are the only two sources. And understand, Terry and I are not going to ban them. We understand we're an essential service, so we just want you to do them safely if you're going to do them at all. And we both actually encourage you not to do them. So that's that. Now we're going to move on from.
Yeah, one more thing, that realtor Facebook group that you see on Facebook, they've been pretty nasty about people having open houses. A lot of the other agents have been pretty nasty in that regard.
They are no holds barred, scathing in there about their opinions and thoughts of agents that are conducting them. There's a few that are tepidly defending them, particularly around lawful instructions from sellers, but that's a personal decision. You as a realtor get to say, I'm going to have to walk away from this listing. I can understand why realtors wouldn't walk away from the listing, which puts you in a predicament, especially if you want that commission and you want to serve the client and you want to get paid. Well, then you're going to have to find a real safe way to do it, and that would be it. And you might even go into the realtor groups and say, look, I did do an open house. This is how I conducted my business. I followed protocols. I was extremely safe. And be brave to stand up for yourself in defense of conducting an open house. I'm not saying don't do them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. But if you're going to do them, you do need to be strong and vigilant. That's really what I'm saying. Just be strong. Does anybody know about the changes that are taking place at the Land Title Office, or a little old land LTO, around government changes, I should say, around the Land Ownership Transfer Act? Does anybody know or has heard of the acronym called LOTA, L-O-T-A? Well, this is going to be super exciting. Big changes are coming our way. Roy Choi, just for the record, you're smiling directly at me. You're like front and center on my screen. All I have is an image of you, but you're smiling and it makes me smile. So thank you. Hang on, before I move on, Jane, you said, Josh, the Schedule A should state open houses by appointment only and not put any open house signs inviting drop-ins. Well done. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Is that something you added recently, Jane? Give me a head nod. Just give me a head nod. Or give me a, yeah.
Two-hand wave.
Okay, very good. Well, anyways, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So around money laundering and trying to determine, or trying to, in the interest of trying to keep the pricing of houses down and safe, and to really find out who in fact is buying real estate, the government has come up with a Land Ownership Transfer Act. And there's going to be a Land Ownership Transfer Registry as a result of this act.
Do you mean transparency? Isn't it the Land
Owner Transparency Act? Yeah, transparency. Yeah. What did I say?
Not transparency.
Yes, transference or something.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So let me share with you what BCREA is saying right now, and you guys can So right up here, how does this affect? Beginning November 30th, a transparency declaration must be filled to the Land Ownership Transparency Registry on behalf of the transferee of the land. So for transactions that are set to close on November 30th or later, your buyer clients will need to be made aware of this additional reporting requirements. The actual filling or filing is something the legal professionals will be responsible for. So your notary or your lawyer. However, for transactions closing after November 30th, it's important for realtors to note the following. Number one, advise your clients to speak to a legal professional about these requirements early on to ensure there is ample time for appropriate information to be gathered and filed. Be aware that when a buyer is a corporation, partnership, or trust, not a resident of Canada, or has beneficial ownership as a share, or has shareholders outside of the country, this period could take up to 1 month. So that's significant. That's the reason why I wanted to talk about it today. These new requirements, especially for those that are hidden behind numbers or shareholders agreements, now have to actually come out in the open and declare who they are. This could take a little bit of time, which means if you're doing a very quick close, you may not be able to close in the time frame based on these new requirements. So you're going to need to plan for closing periods to allow for legal professionals to complete the transparency declaration and determine if a transparency report must be filed. In situations where transparency reports are required, advise clients to speak to their legal professionals to understand the timelines of what they should expect. So basically, things are changing. It's still business as usual. There's one more layer or box to check, and it's going to be around transparency. What's really fascinating about this transparency is, oh, hang on a second here. Let me go here. Can you guys?
Do you mean April 30th, 2021, when the public will be able to?
I was just going to go there. Yes.
Yeah, search and obtain partial information about ownership interest in land. So.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen now? You can see it's just one sheet of paper on there.
We see the BCREA, the actual filing is something legal professionals will be responsible for.
Okay. I'll figure this out. Don't you worry. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Getting out of this one. All right. So now over here, present. I'm going to go to. Aman, I've got a file on my laptop that I wanted to share in here. Is that possible or not so much? I'm guessing not so much. Which is fine. Okay, so you guys can still see me. So I'll just, I'll point out what Michael just said. So beginning April 30th, well, first of all, beginning November 30th, so in a couple of weeks, this is the new way our business is going to change. So there's going to be a complete registry. There's going to be a unmasking of who's who in the zoo of selling properties. Actually, if you read the documents, sellers will have to disclose who they are after November 30th. And of course, all buyers will have to disclose who they are. And this really has more of an impact on the corporations or the numbered companies. And what they're really obviously trying to do is just to stop money laundering. It says right here, why was the Landowner Transparency Act created? The province introduced a comprehensive plan in the 2018 budget to address broad concerns about housing affordability in BC. In its 30-point plan for housing affordability in BC, the government stated it is taking action to end hidden ownership. So this is an attack on hidden ownership in order to crack down on tax fraud and close loopholes. Since many parts of the act involve taxation matters, the Ministry of Finance is leading this initiative. One of the things for individuals, you have to provide their full legal names. Of course, that's always been the case, but the individual is whether they're an individual as a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. They also have to now note if the individual is not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada, every country or state in which the individual is a citizen. They're going to be going as for their chaining backwards to find out who they are and where they come from. If the individual's principal residence is in Canada, the city and province in which that principal residence is located. And if the individual's principal residence is outside of Canada, the city and country in which that principal residence is located. There's a whole lot more going on than this little document that I have. Now, what Michael said is who can access this information? Right now, a credit card and a click of a mouse can get you into the land title office, and you can go ahead and see what's going on in terms of sales and ownership, but you really don't have full access to the names of people if they're purchased under numbered companies. Beginning April 30th, 2021, the public can search and obtain partial information about ownership interest in land. Some information such as birth date and social insurance numbers will not be publicly accessible. Yeah. And only those defined as regulators, a taxing authority, or a law enforcement entity may access complete information about reporting bodies and interests. So fascinating changes to our industry, which of course never ceases to amaze me. There are always some kind of a change taking place in our industry on a regular basis, as if the fact that there was going to be an amalgamation of our real estate council and our office of superintendent of real estate folding in and under the BC FSA Financial Services Authority coming next year. We've got more regulatory changes taking place right now. So bigger point is if you're working with builders, you're working with anybody that's out of the country, they now have a much higher level of disclosure of who they are and where they come from and where they live than they've ever had before. And the main purpose is to crack down on hidden ownership or tax fraud and money laundering. They don't say it.
Starting November 30th, like you said, the registrar must refuse any application to register an interest in land if it's not accompanied by the transparency declaration. So there's no way around it. There's absolutely no way around it.
Yeah. I'm in favor of it. I'm absolutely in favor of it. I find it a bit of a stretch to believe that this type of ownership is solely responsible for the pricing of real estate in the Lower Mainland, as the government might suggest, or those that are pushing this from the government side are suggesting that this is the reason our prices are so high. I don't know that that's entirely true, but it certainly doesn't help.
And as Michael mentioned last week, buyer's address has to be on the contract, not care of agent, not care of brokerage. That is so important because that's part of the transparency as well. So that's mandatory. Thank
you for bringing that up, Carol. It's funny. It's so funny. It's an old school habit. I know for sure in my time as a realtor back in my day, 30 years ago, and such, it was very common to put care of realtor, care of listing, or care of buyer's agent, or whatever it is you'd put down there. But you certainly weren't putting their address down there for fear that the listing agent might try and contact them, or the seller might contact them and try and coerce them into being their new client. And so it was really like that was the angle for the most part. That was what I was told when I was coming into the industry. You don't need to put that down. Don't worry, the lawyers will verify that. Well, the lawyers get darn right persnippety when we don't have that information complete. It's a little more extra work for them. They would much rather just have it right up front. And it's an easy thing for us to do. We're the ones that have it. Is there the risk that the seller might send a scathing letter to a buyer that, contracts with them and then maybe kills the deal? Possibly. But it's not like they can hide anyways. I mean, who knows what the outlier risks are. But nonetheless, we do have a requirement now to fill them out incomplete. So,
well, at the end of the day, everybody would know if the buyer buys the place from the seller. Well, then the buyer's now in the new address, which is the seller's address. So it's just like, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's not secret for very long.
It's not secret for very long.
Exactly.
Yes. That's all I've got. Those two things are, I think, a refresher on open houses and just giving you some heads up on the Landowner Transparency Act, LOTA. So if you hear people refer to LOTA, LOTA is the Land Ownership Transparency Act, which just means full disclosure on ownership, which some of you might be going, well, didn't we always have full disclosure? No, we did not. You could hide behind numbered companies, behind numbered companies, and behind numbered companies, layered, so that real ownership is really hard to figure out. That's changing.
And like you said earlier, Josh, be really careful if you're doing transactions with people that are involved with number companies. There is a time frame involved that, like you said earlier, you're not going to get quick closes.
Definitely not. No, they're going to take.
I think what I read, I can't find the date off the top of my, but like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
For a time frame for situations like that.
Is that what you heard? Okay.
That's what I read last night when I was reading. It was I was quite surprised at the length of time that if they're.
Well, this might be also a clerical thing on the office side too. So I don't know who we've got from the office if Carla's in on this meeting, but something to consider, Carla. I should talk to you like you're in here if you're not in here. Let's take a look.
She's almost in here every week except for this one, probably.
Right, I don't see her name in there. I don't see any KW representative in there. So I will update them, or perhaps managing brokers, you can have the honors of the update. But it's important now. Normally, conveyance would send instructions to the lawyer or notary. I don't know what the protocol. I think they actually get there pretty quick. I think once the deal's been filed, they have a habit of emailing the information over almost right away. So they don't wait till the very last minute. It's the lawyers themselves that typically wait until the last minute to reach out to the clients to book the appointment. So we're on it. Never mind. You don't need to do anything, Michael. Carol, you're good. Yeah. We send information out right away. I know that because there's been a couple of times when we've had to confirm when our information sent out, and then Michaela will pull out the email saying, yeah, you submitted your deal on the 5th and we sent it out on the 6th. So we're on it. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Is there anything going on in the industry or happening for them in the field that they've seen or recognizing that they'd like to share or chat with?
I have a question regarding the last subject.
Can you even go? Mm-hmm.
If you had a buyer that wants to write an offer on a property that owner's a numbered company, and they want to close quickly, would you have to say this might take a month to remove subjects? How would that work?
Not removing subjects, but I think that you're looking at, by the time it gets to after subjects are removed and we send the information to the lawyers, there could be, a few week delay to get that transparency documents put together, so that they could close.
So that has nothing to do with the contract?
No.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem.
No, nothing has been presented to us by way of a clause that needs to be inserted into the contract as sort of a warning gesture to a potential delay on completion or possession if we're trying to do a quick close based on number companies or the LODA. Is it just LODA? The LODA?
LODA.
I think it's just LODA.
Is it LODA? It's like it's Facebook. It's not the
Facebook.
Okay.
They call it LOTR.
Yeah, that's a land ownership transparency registry.
Yeah.
And then the act. Yeah, got it. All right. Thanks for that, Thomas. Anyone else have a question or some thoughts or comments? Again, I want every one of you to have the experience of sheer silence after you've asked for a question. Thanks, Jane. So Rod is asking, if there is a delay to get the transparency document, then the completion should be delayed, correct? So I hear what you're saying, and typically delays, they get handled a couple of ways: lawyer to notary, lawyer to lawyer, notary to notary, whatever combination of buyer and seller representation on the conveyance side would typically have a communication between the two of them regarding usually delays. But we get involved as well too. They often ask for us to get involved because the right thing to do is to draft up an amendment or an addendum to the contract stating the delay. If I'm reading this correctly, I'm really not sure. I mean, I imagine this is going to happen. There might be some hiccups as we move towards November 30th. But the forms are already available to go and view. Everything is ready to roll. So they're not just creating them as we're speaking in the moment. They're ready to roll. I would, personally, Rod, what I would do, you probably have a notary or a lawyer that you use regularly. If I were you, I'd just give them a call today and say, how will LOTA impact my transactions? And then ask a question like you just asked there. I think that would be I think it would be for all of you a wonderful thing to do, to be proactive, get in there, and thanks, Rod, and ask your lawyer and notary what their plan is around the new form coming through. I intend to call Rick Payne right after we're done here just to see how he's prepared for it.
And of course, the government's put in massive fines for non-compliance or being providing false or misleading information. They talk about $50,000 for a corporation or $25,000 for an individual, or possibly 15% of the assessed value of the property.
Ouchie.
Isn't that huge?
That's huge.
Other offenses under the Act will be subject to a fine up to $100,000 for corporations or other entities, or $50,000 for individuals. And of course, there's fees for filing. So I would imagine that there'll be a small addition to a buyer's closing costs. Like we're talking between $5 and most of them between $5 and $35.
Yeah, they're
small.
The administrative fees are small. They're not big.
They're not big at all.
Yeah.
I don't know whether more. Go ahead.
Hey, Josh?
Yes.
It's Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I've been bouncing in and out because I'm actually at an appointment. But this also applies, doesn't it, to like if something's registered in a trust account, like an inheritance trust and stuff like that, not just a numbered company, correct?
Estate sales, probate sales, yes. Everyone, it will apply to everyone.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Yeah. To expand on that, there's a section there that it speaks to that it applies to beneficial owners. I'm not sure what that means. I do know that. Yeah, I don't know what a beneficial owner means. I'm going to ask Rick his take on that word. But they do make reference of shareholders.
Actually, I know what a beneficial person is. If there's a trust account, and you're one of the beneficiaries of the trust, you are a beneficial owner.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they have to be disclosed as well too. They're fully
all the things that were always being disclosed before.
So yeah. Yes. Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Good luck on your appointment, by the way.
Well, it's actually interesting.
I'm done now.
It's interesting because whenever you take a numbered company, you also need the certificate and the registered director. So the directors' names are there. So, and then you FINTRAC them individually. So all that is exposed already. So I'm kind of looking, what more are they looking for? Because that should be attached anyways.
My gut says, go ahead, Michael.
What the end result is, the way the system is now, what's registered at land titles is a numbered company. Without any information, and
so they can't.
No, they that information to
They're
the lawyer's
making up
office, but isn't available for further scrutiny. And I think that's why they brought in this Transparency Act. And like Josh said earlier, obviously there is the Privacy Act, so no one's private information is going to be given out, but people will be able to see who owns property absolute in the province of British Columbia. On all the deals completing after November 30th.
So that one extra layer of, if you were savvy enough as a member of the public to have to go and take the numbered company and go and actually find out who are the owners inside that numbered company is removed, because you are now able to go to a registry and see who they all are.
Mm-hmm.
This really isn't for our enjoyment. It's meant to try and weed out the baddies.
The government really insists that there's been money laundering, like Josh said earlier, in real estate, and so they're trying to tighten all the rules and all the potential loopholes. But when we've seen what's been going on with that casino investigation, I mean, yeah, that's been pretty frightful,
pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. It's really interesting. I just read an article on our money laundering ways, so to speak, and mostly our policing, the whole policing of it. And there was a gentleman who is no longer part of the government that was instrumental in the beginning, the launch of the money laundering campaign, basically, or the protocols that would be put into place around what we as realtors have to go and collect. But he said ultimately it was the biggest toothless tiger ever created by the government, in so much that we have people running around grabbing information, and as soon as that information is grabbed, it stops. It goes no further. There's no direct line to RCMP. There's no communication. There is absolutely nothing that would actually lead to any kind of lawful action or investigation. None whatsoever. And he said, like, there has to be, they have to change their methodology and permissions, I guess, to allow for one organization to be able to communicate with the other. And he said ultimately they just don't want to communicate with each other. So it was the biggest, he described it as a toothless tiger, and it really has no impact. So hopefully we see, I shouldn't say hopefully, because I don't see it as a major disturbance in my business or type of activity within my business. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but
no, I think
it just seems
more about making the clients aware, especially on commercial deals with number of companies and things like that.
Sure.
Okay.
Carla, if they're looking for fraud, why does the public need access? The public doesn't need access, but they're giving them access in a very light version. I think that's more meant to be a deterrent for those that would be committing fraud, to recognize that there's nowhere to hide. Hey, Debbie.
We as realtors have always known that the land titles office is completely accessible to members of the public. It's never been secret. I mean, if they know how to navigate the waters through it, I mean, they can find out how much your mortgage documents were when you took out your mortgage on your house. I mean, none of that, all that information is public, right? It's not a secret.
Totally. So I'll give you one more opportunity. If anyone has any questions or anything, any comments or needs and a want, now's your opportunity. Otherwise, I'll release you back into the.
Can I have about 60 seconds?
Oh, of course. Yes. Yeah,
I keep saying it every, probably every meeting, but to be very, very careful that when you're writing contracts or filling out listing agreements, that you're really taking the time to look for mistakes that, errors that you might have made. When your listing comes live, go over every little item in the listing, make sure that everything's correct. I had a really interesting one this week with one of our agents. They had ordered a Form B from a property management company, which stated that they had 2 parking spaces, and they agreed in the offer to order an updated one. Well, the updated Form B did not. The parking was completely different, and instead of 2 spots, there was 1. So I mean, really pay attention to the small details, because a lot of people are getting burned on little things that they just overlook, right? Like every time you order a Form B, go over every line in that.
Make sure that Form B is for the property you're purchasing.
Yes.
Can't tell you how many times I've ordered strata docs and a property manager has sent me a Form B that, without proper checking going through, is not for the property we've listed. It's a different strata lot number altogether, with different amounts for maintenance or owings or who knows what. But you got to be very careful with that stuff. So yeah, Carla, 100%. Thanks, Carla. It's a common enough error by property managers, and they obviously don't mean to do it. It's human error, but it's a common enough error that it should be part of your standard business practice, your checklist or your flight manual, that when a Form B comes in, you are referencing strata lot number and the strata plan, of course, to the listing you're selling. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that's been one of the biggest things that and it's ongoing, is, minor errors.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, 100%.
Minor errors, and they can be costly depending what they are.
Cool.
So
And just
take that extra time.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, everyone, who contributed. I appreciate it. For all of you that took the time to be here today, reminder that we meet Thursdays. You all know this. We meet Thursdays. Anybody in the office, just remind them. Thursdays, and now it's every 2 weeks. It's not every week. So we're on that schedule, Deb. Yeah, so we're not meeting every week like we had previously. And it might be a good idea to add the Schedule A to your template to multiple. Yes, of course, 100%. Jane, Ken, you guys rock. Amazing. There's something very professional about that background scenery. I don't know how you've blurred it out, but it looks so good. It's a shame we can't hear you talk. All right. Well, listen, you're released and free to go now. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.